We'll call the meeting to order. Peter? This agenda was posted in the office of the county clerk on the 7th day of February 2021. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, and Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. We have a full board this afternoon. Lois is participating via Zoom. So I can see you. You're awful little up there on that picture, but we can see you.
I can barely see you.
Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item is the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that motion carries. Then on to our discussion items. The first one, well, we have none, so we're going to our action items. The first one is information and assistance specialist position for ADRC. Tammy, how are you today?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
All right, so we've attached a report here, but basically we are asking to add a full-time information and assistance specialist to the ADRC staff. We promoted Alyssa, who is here with us, to a supervisor position in November. And if you look at the report, we highlighted some of the reasons why we feel that is necessary and the benefits that we have reaped in the department because of that promotion. And then Alyssa did a great job of surveying and reaching out to our regional quality specialist to gather some data about our staffing pattern compared to surrounding counties or counties with similar populations, and kind of the caseload that the information and assistance specialists are carrying compared to other counties as well. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Okay, one question I have was, is there any chance that the grant funds would cease and not be available to fund this position down the road?
No, I do not foresee that happening, although I don't have a crystal ball to look into the state budget's future. But our grant is an annual award. It is not something that we have to write for. It is given to us through the funding through the state. And in future budgets, the ADRC is asking for additional funding. If that funding is awarded, the Washington County allocation will be increasing. They're estimating about $300,000 more every year. So unless ADRCs get put on the chopping block as far as a major budget cut, I would not foresee our allocation decreasing.
Okay, thank you. I think you did a really good job on providing the supporting information that you did for this position?
I
so
have
you-
to give major kudos to Alyssa. If you ask Matt Fernal, I am a C+ writer and I differ an A+ in writing. So she did a lot of the writing.
That was a good job. Now, does anyone else have questions? Pam?
Oh, haven't been here. Yeah, I'm just for sharing that I do support this position, and you did share a lot of supporting evidence too. I did have some additional questions for you that we can take offline just to help better educate myself too on the bigger picture of the role, and to the specifics of the data and the quality improvement that you all have done.
Yes.
But part of this role too, my understanding is to help enhance your supportive data and your quality improvement processes.
Yes, so when or prior to Alyssa coming on board, being the director, I had 15 direct reports and I just felt really spread thin. So some of that quality assurance that I wanted to do
Yeah.
just really wasn't happening from a time constraint, but Alyssa has picked up and continued some of those processes or even added processes that really help us dive deeper into what we're doing.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. My biggest question too was the grant, and if you first saw that continuing or any potential timelines on the grant, that was really my own big concern. And the data that also really helps support this role is your breakdown of the counties and the workload in the population. So truly appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Lois, do you have any questions?
No, I too want to commend you on a great report. I mean, you very clearly, it shows that you have the need and that what you're doing is improving the quality. And I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, nobody else? All right. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you all.
Do we need a motion on this? My paperwork is not coming up on this topic. Yeah, it's blank, so, all right. To approve the resolution? All right, so I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution that's presented, and then that will go on to the county board, correct? Okay. Yep, it's just, oh, all right. So is there a second then to approve it?
I'll second that.
All right, Lois, okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that motion carries as well. All right, then the next one is subsidized guardianship. And Julie, well, that'll be yours.
Is it good? Okay. Good. Good evening. We're going to request tonight this advisory resolution for subsidized guardianship. Coral Klein, our Children's and Family Division Manager, is also here to help with any questions that you might have. But the state of Wisconsin requires the department to offer subsidized guardianship as a permanency option for children in the child welfare system. And under subsidized guardianship, the county continues to fund foster care payments to relative foster homes who have legal guardianship of children in their care until the child reaches the age of majority. The family ceases to receive any other services from the department under subsidized guardianship, which leaves us fiscally responsible for families we are not working with outside of an annual review that is completed by our foster care coordinator. Conversely, when parents' rights have been terminated and a child is adopted, the state takes over the adoption payment for these children until they reach the age of majority. This is an advisory resolution that's being taken up by the Wisconsin Counties Association as advocacy in the state budget to help the counties to offset the cost of this mandate that they've required of us, that when they initiated it several years ago, it was sold to us as a cost neutral service that we were going to be providing to guardians, relative guardians. So I will just stop there and see if you have any additional questions.
I do have a few to clarify. If a child is adopted as of today, they still receive those subsidized payments? Is that correct?
So, right, they receive an additional adoption payment after they are adopted by those adoptive parents.
Is that how it's always been?
I just want to clarify, I just want to clarify the difference between a subsidized guardianship payment and adoption payment.
Yeah.
Those are separate?
Yes.
Okay. So, could you please repeat your question? It just sounded like you're talking about the same.
Well, that's why I think I was confused
Okay.
on this because, so if a child is adopted, they don't get the guardianship subsidized payments anymore then? Is that correct?
Right, correct. So, adoption and guardianship are two completely separate legal actions, as you know.
Yeah.
So if a child were to get a subsidized be under a subsidized guardianship, and then for some reason the plan moves to termination of parental rights and adoption, my understanding is they would not receive both payments.
Okay, all right. All right, that I needed that clarified in my mind. And then I know in your paperwork you had said, my question is, why is a subsidized guardianship easier than a termination of parental rights?
Oh, sure. Well, with a guardianship, you're just literally through the legal process transferring legal guardianship of the child to a different caregiver. And in the case of subsidized guardianship, that is a relative only, unless the child is over 14, then it can be a non-relative. But for adoption, you actually have to go through the legal process of terminating parental rights, finding of that parent being unfit legally, and the second piece of that it is in the best interest of the child to be adopted. So it's a much longer and extensive legal process. A lot of times relatives prefer to do guardianship because it is less intrusive on the family. Some folks can be concerned about their family structure. Now I'm adopting my grandchild, now it's my daughter, and now, sort of how confusing that can get for some families. Some families just prefer this less intrusive option, and it is much more drawn out legally to terminate parental rights.
I just felt that needed to be expressed on the record, so
Fair, thank you.
it's fine. In my mind, there was a lot of common sense to your argument, and I can only hope that the legislature sees it that way too. If it goes that far, so keep our fingers crossed. Now, anyone else?
A question? Okay, I just, I want to make sure I understand this. So, in the past, when a child was adopted, there wasn't a supplemental payment, but now because most of the children are not adopted, the subsidized payment continues, which comes out of your budget, limited budget. Am I understanding that correctly?
Okay, that's partially accurate. So subsidized guardianship is another permanency option for children. Adoption is a different option for children. And so for children who either we are unable to terminate the parental rights, or they have a relative who's willing to take over guardianship, but not willing to become adoptive parents, then they go that route. For children whose parents' rights are terminated, they then can also go the adoptive route. And so it's two separate things. When a child is adopted, then the state takes over the responsibility of that case, and they continue the adoptive payment to that family. When subsidized guardianship is chosen, then that fee or that payment is then provided by the county out of our budget that has not changed much over the last 10, 20 years. And so if you see in the paperwork, you can see every year our cost is growing, and we have to continue those payments until the child reaches the age of majority. And so as more children get added onto a subsidized guardianship, our costs will increase continually over time. And so what we're asking of the state is for them to take over the cost of subsidized guardianship like they take over the adoptive fee.
So then my question is, what has caused this? Like, it looked to me like you went from 2 to 24. And am I looking at it right? I don't have it in front of me, in about 5 years' time. So what causes that big change or the shift from just 2 or 3 in a year to, 24 in a year?
So it started with, this becoming a permanency option. And so then Washington County started implementing that option, which was required by the state. I think Coral can talk a little bit about the nuances of why that is chosen, but I know some family members don't choose or don't want to go down the route of adopting and terminating parental rights because they do hope that their family member, whether it's their daughter or grandchild, will be able to eventually take over their parental, capacity and responsibility. And so, and they still want that parent to be involved in that child's life. But that at that point in time, or this point in time, that parent cannot provide the care and safety that's required for their child.
So then,
Sorry. Just to add on to what Julie said, I completely agree with the explanation. The other piece of maybe why it has increased over the last 5 years is because the state has required it. We do get monitored by the state in terms of the permanency outcomes for our kids and our families. And when termination of parental rights cannot occur or is not appropriate for a particular family, we are under, again, supervision of the state in terms of permanency to encourage subsidized guardianship for children to reach a permanent placement as soon as safely possible.
Okay, so just to clarify, this is about shifting the cost burden from the county to the state level. That's really the
correct.
bottom line.
Mhm.
Yes.
And initially, we thought this was going to be cost neutral, but now it is costing the county. You said it was about 150,000.
Yeah, at this point, it's 150,000. You can see that it's grown every year.
Mhm.
And so we anticipate it just to continue to grow.
Okay. But my concern is kind of what's best for the child. Part of the county is to provide needed services. And
No, you're on.
And so, okay, so this is starting to cost us a little bit more. Some things will, we're not going to make money on everything. We're not going to be cost neutral on everything. That's just the reality. And my concern is what's best for these children. I'm concerned about there being delay in these funds or just the whole process. But then you made a comment that you're not working with these families anyways. Could you clarify that? What type of services are actually providing these families?
Right. Once a child reaches a permanency plan, then the department pulls out. And so when this child becomes a guardian of their relative, and we have safety measures and services in place, then we are no longer involved in their case or in their family, except for providing this payment.
Yes, and in addition, I think we're specifically talking about CPS case management services. A lot of times these families still receive things like CCS or mental health services through the county or other waiver programs that are providing services. But we're talking specifically around my team providing case management through Child Protective Services. Once that guardianship is granted, those services are closed. So it does not interfere with any service provision whatsoever.
Okay, so all we're really doing is playing a bank, providing this check, no more services.
That's correct. And we're essentially asking the state, since they put this burden on us and this requirement, but sold it to us that it was going to be cost neutral. Now our county and all other 72 counties in Wisconsin are seeing such an increase in requirement to fund that the state fund it. Whether it's the state takes over the payment or they provide the funding to the county to pay, we're asking for them to fund it.
Okay. Yeah, so it wouldn't affect services then at all for the child, or put the child at harm in any way,
No.
or delay any care or anything for the child.
No. And when we when we end a case in child welfare, that family is always linked up with services prior to, closing that case out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Just one more question. And maybe you weren't there at the time, but how did they sell this as something cost neutral?
You're good.
I mean, it seems pretty clear to me that if you're making a payment for something that you didn't make a payment for before, that it would not be cost neutral. I'm just trying, do you remember what the justification for that was?
That was before my time, Coral. I don't know.
Well, I think the history is a little interesting. Just the little tidbits I've gotten of this recently. It first started in Milwaukee, and that program was cost neutral. And I think as they rolled it out statewide, it was sold to counties as it being cost neutral. But my guess is it just didn't turn out that way from the quite expense that it was costing the state at the time.
And I do think it's important just to note that while they may have demonstrated that was cost neutral in Milwaukee, Milwaukee's child welfare program is run by the state. And so they do pay for it.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I hope that the state takes this on, because it certainly seems unfair.
Great comment, Lois. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, good. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the advisory resolution regarding this matter. Well, I need a motion first. You want to make it? Okay, great. Now Peter will second it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that motion carries. Okay, then the next item is the juvenile detention hearings. Another resolution.
Yes. So again, this is an advisory resolution to request that Washington County supports pending legislation regarding the changing the timeframes for detention hearings. I just want to bring to your attention that this legislation was originally drafted in support by Washington County Judge Gonnering before his retirement. So here in Washington County, we keep calling it the Gonnering Bill. It's not what it's called, but that's what we keep saying. And it's also important to know that this request is not just from the department, but that there are several entities that are involved in the requirement to hold court hearings within specific timeframes. And so this particular legislation would not only impact staff at the Human Services Department, but also the Washington County Sheriff's Office, the Judiciary, court reporters, clerk of courts, the DA's office, public defender's office, and our crisis staff. So when we do have to call in to special session, all of those entities need to be called in for these court hearings. This does happen or could occur about 3 times per year. So it's the day after Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve, and Christmas Eve. Those are times when the county is closed, but they're not recognized state holidays. And so the request for this advisory resolution is to support legislation to align the court hearing times, the detention hearing times for juveniles that aligns with children in need of protective services. So again, I'll stop there and see what questions you might have.
What is the pending legislation? Is there a bill that's already in the system?
Yes, there is a bill that's being taken up. I don't know the exact time frame, which is why we wanted to get a resolution just showing our support from Washington County.
Okay. All right. And my other 2 questions, you answered. I was going to ask if the courts weighed in on this, but honoring, we at least know what our courts feel about this. And I would assume that the other courts within the whole state. And then my other question was going to be, how often does this happen? And you answered that lovely, beautifully. So there.
I read your
I'm
mind.
done. Damn.
Yeah, you did answer the question. This occurs, just 3 times a year. Then, which brings me back to, again, what's best for the child. I think delaying a hearing for a child, a whole day is pretty traumatic for that one child. And if it's so rare, the burden on our people who serve the public is very minimal. And I would like to put that child first.
I'll describe to you sort of the process
Okay.
and what her departments or her division's experiences, just so you have a little bit more understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, and I completely agree with what you've said around a child spending more time in detention without a hearing, and just the traumatic piece of that experience for a youth. A couple of things regarding the planning for these particular times of the year. We do a quarterly judges meeting, and we have all of the parties that Julie had mentioned: Sheriff's Department, the judges, Sheriff's Department, in all of these offices, all those folks. We get together and we do an emergency plan for this after hours time. If a case comes in during a certain amount of time where the hearing would land on a day where it's I'm just going to call it a county holiday for lack of a better word, we do have a plan. We have an after hours plan, and we always try, as we do and every day that we do our work, to have a child in the least restrictive setting. We try not to take custody of any child if we don't have to. So if we do have to take custody of a child during that time, we have a very full crisis plan for all of us and how to mobilize, opening up the courthouse, and what judge is going to be on call to do the hearing, and who's going to be involved to get the child there. So I want to let you know every time during these particular holidays, we always have a plan to mobilize. We have been very lucky, and we have not had to utilize the plan. We've been close a few times, but my team and acute care services has been able to figure out a plan where a child can stay in the community. But we do work with other community partners. So if a child cannot safely remain in the community, then we do have a duty to take that child into custody. I will say that there are times where a child will sit for more than one day in secure detention. The child was arrested on a Friday night. Weekends don't count either, just like in adult court. So that child would be sitting in custody until a hearing on Monday. However, the judge does review an affidavit from law enforcement that basically determines if the merits for the reason why that child is in secure custody, meet the muster. And if the judge really said it wasn't prudent, that they would allow that child to be released on a Saturday. It doesn't happen that often, because I think my department or my division and law enforcement do a very good job of teaming on these types of situations. But that is, I believe, a possibility if we look to implement something like this. We have not had those conversations because, we haven't had to have them yet, but there are different mechanisms in place to review a child in custody where they just wouldn't be sitting there without their due process or without their right. I will also say that we can take a child into custody, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're sitting in secure detention, which I think is the biggest concern, sitting in secure without a hearing. And I completely appreciate that. The child may be at our shelter at Riverbend Place, or they might be taken into custody and placed with a relative. So there are other options, and we always try to, of course, exercise those options first.
All right, then question, why would you got all these options in place technically that essentially don't support moving this bill? Then why would you support this bill? Delaying it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of seems like a conflict there.
So in some ways, we're wanting to align 938 with Chapter 48, right? So there's 48 hours with the CHIPS case. And so we want to align it to make it consistent. There are, things to consider in regards to safety of county employees and state employees, because this also would fall under, we know it doesn't happen very often, but if we were to have a county shutdown for weather, I'm not actually sure it's ever happened. I did once, okay. And so that this would fall under that, this jurisdiction of this bill. And so, to think about having to bring staff in during inclement weather, right? It's very dangerous for people. So that is one consideration. The other consideration is county resources, because then you're bringing people in on a day that, they're going to get paid overtime. And it's quite a few people. I definitely appreciate, right? You're weighing county resources against, the safety and rights of children. And so, but it is for consideration that is one of the outcomes of this.
I have a question. It says here that the resolution, let me see, failure to hold the hearing could result in the loss of jurisdiction over the case. Can you explain what that exactly means? Why would you lose jurisdiction for failure to hear the hearing in a timely manner?
Because per statute, right now you have to hear a 938 juvenile case within 24 hours. And it's possible per statute that if that case is not heard timely, then the court could recognize that the county agency no longer have jurisdiction. It's just a legal mechanism to ensure the timeliness of the hearing.
Okay. And so this is not only for the convenience of the courts, but it's also to maintain your jurisdiction and not have to, what would you drop the case? Is that what would be the right term?
Essentially, the court could throw the case out, yes, if we didn't have a hearing in a timely manner.
Okay.
And then that wouldn't be in the child's best interest, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Potentially, yes. Mm-hmm.
From a law enforcement perspective, having been involved with these children that are arrested for crimes and whatnot, for the most part, it's a way to have not doing this would be a way for juveniles to get away and get off, and basically like a criminal getting off of the technicality. So this protects not only the child from harm to themselves, but harming the community too. So you have to keep everything. It's when you look at the benefit, the welfare of the child, it's the welfare of the child, the welfare of the community, and it's all set together. So most of these cases, when it's involving an arrest, it's protecting the community also. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then our last item is,
Do we need to vote on this?
oh, sorry. You did such a good job. I didn't think we had to do anything else. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve this as an advisory resolution.
So moved.
Okay, Lois, second? Okay, Pam. Any opposed? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we go on to the next item. Staffing plan, Children's Long-Term Support Case Manager, Youth Treatment Services for Human Services.
Yes, so thank you. So this request is to add an additional children's long-term support case manager position to help answer questions. I have Sarah Whitty, who's the youth treatment supervisor for that team. I did provide you with a handout, and so I apologize, Supervisor Gundrum, but I will have it added to the packet for you to look at later. But I did hand out provide you with a handout so that you could see the first part of the handout is the number of children on wait lists by county, as well as some additional data about the Children's Long-Term Support Waitlist Elimination Plan. So the CLTS waiver program provides services and supports to children with disabilities, helping them to live their best lives while remaining in their home and in the community. And for years, many families had to wait to receive these services due to high demand that exceeded the available funding provided by the state of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Department of Health Services partnered with county waiver agencies and began what they call the Waitlist Elimination Initiative. And that was to get children and their families the support that they need. Families often waited for years since counties were only allocated a certain amount of funding each year, and families had to wait until funding was available before they could enroll. And usually that meant a client aged out or was discharged to reopen an additional spot. The Waitlist Elimination Plan was started in 2017, and funding allocations to counties was increased to allow for enrollment of additional children. Counties were given quarterly enrollment numbers to meet in 2018. And at that time, we added 2 case management positions to our waiver program. We did meet all of our benchmarks during this process, but at the same time, our waitlist continued to grow as children and families understood that this service was available and they actually could get enrolled in the program. So we were provided another benchmark in 2019 from January to June, and we did meet those benchmarks, but our waitlist still continued to have children on it. In 2020, the DH stopped providing us waitlist benchmarks, however, said it is a requirement to eliminate the waitlist. And so currently, we have 5 children long-term support case managers, and we have 60 children on the wait list. We have just onboarded a new case manager, just hired a new case manager. And so we believe that that person can take 25 to 30 off the wait list, which still leaves us with an additional 30 children to enroll. And that does not count any new children that become eligible and get put on our wait list. So we are requesting an additional FTE case management position to help us to eliminate the wait list. The state has originally gave us in 2021 a deadline of June 30th, and then a month or so ago, they said it's March 31st. So we have communicated to them what our plan is, and they also have not communicated to us what their plan would be if we were not compliant. The waiver program does not provide direct funding to the counties for staff positions, but we are able to bill our case management time to the waiver. And so as you'll see in this documentation, our productivity projection is that a staff person would have to bill 37% of their time to fund their position and their benefits. We have a benchmark requirement of 40%, and our case managers meet and exceed that benchmark. So this position will be paid for by by the reimbursement that we receive from the waiver itself.
Okay. So the deadline is March 31st. So can you review again? Do you have someone in place already that can do this work?
So we do not. So we just hired, because we had put a position in our 2021 budget,
Okay.
and that person will be able to take 30 kids off the wait list. And so that leaves us with 30 additional children, and we're asking for an additional position to take those kids off the wait
All right.
list.
So can you hire, train, and eliminate the wait list by that end date?
We will not be able to, but we have been in communication with the state, and I know Sarah and Doug had a meeting with them yesterday. They communicated our plan, and the state was okay with that. It is important to know that while they have provided us with these mandates, they also haven't said what will happen if we don't, meet that requirement. But as you can see from this map, many counties are facing the same challenge to eliminate kids off their wait list. We compare ourselves to Ozaukee County often, and they have a very similar number of kids on the wait list. And the state has regularly given us the feedback that staffing issues are not an excuse for not taking kids off the wait list.
Okay. My other question, just a procedural one, does this have to go to administrative committee for approval also? Does
I
anyone
don't
know?
believe so.
Josh, do you know?
The quick answer is no, and my understanding with this particular item, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, is this does not increase the budget and it does not add to the total head count.
No. So this is increasing the head count. It is not, and it's increasing the budget, but it's not increasing the tax levy.
Okay,
Those two qualifiers mean
Yep,
this is
that's
passive.
number one on my list.
This is
No
passive.
tax levy.
Yeah, this is really a passive review by this committee.
Okay. Thank you. Any others? Questions?
Just one, do you need some sort of approval from the state to increase this position by adding it? Because it's a pass-through?
No, it's actually, it's the waiver is very complicated and it's not a pass through. So there's a third party administrator that manages the money for the waiver. So we bill our case management time directly to that third party administrator, and then we receive revenue from that. And so they don't need to approve a position. I think, and Sarah, you could speak to the auditing requirements of billing to the waiver.
Yeah, so just like Julie said, it is a third party, and so just case management is just like any other service that we would authorize for a child who has waiver services. And so we bill those units, we document, it's just like other case management type programs. There are certain things that are billable and certain things that aren't. And so as long as we are following those rules, most of the time that staff spend on cases is billable time.
Thank you.
You don't have to touch it at all. Mary will take care of everything.
Okay. All right. Another question. I see you have starting salary of about 54,000. Is there a salary range, in case there happens to be a skilled, experienced individual out there? That would be nice too.
It's always nice to have somebody come in with experience. The salary range in tier 1 with a new comp plan is 53,934, and the top of tier 1 is 61,484. We do tend to hire at the beginning range. If somebody were to come in a little bit above, it's generally a couple of $1,000s. And so we do look at that, and Sarah does a fantastic job about managing, to their case management billable time to what her staff salary costs are. But yes, we would come in a little higher if we had somebody with experience.
So you don't need any approval for us for a salary range, because I just see a starting salary.
Yeah, no, generally it's negotiated between, the person and HR. And then, I provide a final say. If it starts to get way out of our budget, sometimes we can't afford people. But generally in the human services field, we are pretty competitive these days. And so we do get good candidates with good experience.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? No, good. All right. Then I would entertain a motion to approve of the additional children's long-term support case manager position. Anybody?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There being none, the motion passes. All right, our next meeting date is Wednesday, March 24th. There being no further business before this committee, we stand adjourned.